What is going on, everyone? I hope you're having a marginally above average day. Don't want you to have a great day. You know, then you get your hopes up. The next day is kind of disappointing by comparison. But if you just have that little bit better than average, it's always kind of nice, but doesn't keep your expectations too high continuing on into the week. Today, we have got system requirements for Spider-Man Remastered coming to PC on August 12th, which is really exciting. It requires an absolute beast of a system if you're looking to run this thing maxed out to the hilt, 4K, ray tracing, all of that good stuff. Also, we've got requirements for the new FIFA game, which is finally going to be on the current gen version of the game and not running last gen versions like it has been since the new consoles came out. Not really sure why they do that, but we're going to get into all of it, and yeah, let's swing into it, shall we? Spider-Man, get it? But first, today's video is brought to you by Keysfan.com and their software super deal where you can get some of the best prices out there on Microsoft software. Especially with my coupon code, you can get half off of Windows keys as well as 62% off on Microsoft Office products like Windows 10 Pro, Windows 11 Pro, and Office 2019 Professional Plus and Office 2021 Professional Plus. And they've also got a bundle with Windows 10 Pro and Office 2019 in the same package. To save money on Windows 10 Pro, just go ahead and add the key to your cart, which starts off at $15.17. But once you get into your cart, you can go ahead and apply my discount code at checkout YTB50, and that will give you a shocking 50% off, bringing the price down to just over $7 at $7.58. And when you proceed to checkout, you can pay with either a credit card or PayPal, whichever one happens to fit your needs. And this also applies to Microsoft Office products, but again, you're going to get 62% off on Office products with the code YTB62 at checkout. Applying that to the $67.40 price, Office 2019 brings the price down to a stunning $25.61. So I don't know what you're waiting for. If you need your software keys, head over to keysfan.com right now and be sure to use those coupon codes at checkout. YTB50 on Windows products for half off and YTB62 for 62% off on Microsoft Office products. So first up, we got to talk about those Spider-Man system requirements. Can your PC handle it? Thankfully, Nixxes, who has handled the PC port for Spider-Man Remastered, as well as the eventually releasing Miles Morales expansion standalone game sequel-ish type of thing later this year. Nixxes has done a fairly solid job with ports in the past for PC, pretty good. And we've got a great set of system requirements here covering the full gambit, what everything is targeting from the minimum recommended, high settings, ray tracing, all of that stuff, and a full breakdown of everything in here, which is always nice to see. This is one of the best ones I've seen, honestly, up to this date, because even for the hard drives, they actually even mention, for a lot of the requirements, they recommend an SSD rather than a mechanical drive, for certain settings and stuff, which is just like a detail I don't think I've seen up until this point in time, making that, denoting the separation from certain requirements. So really awesome set of system requirements here, very detailed. We need more of this in the industry. But starting out at the minimum end, which I wouldn't recommend, I mean, it's for 720p 30 FPS. This is like your bargain basement entry level into Spider-Man Remastered on the PC. If you absolutely do not even own a PlayStation 4, I mean, this would be sub PS4. This would be worse than PS4, honestly. Yeah, pretty bad. So minimum is for 720p 30 FPS, very low settings. They say a GTX 950 or AMD equivalent, and for the CPU an i3 4160 or AMD equivalent, 8 gigabytes of system memory, Windows 10 64-bit, and a 75 gigabyte mechanical drive. So hopefully if you have that hardware, you're not even thinking about playing Spider-Man. If you do, I think you're going to have a pretty tough time. For 1080p 60 FPS at medium, which is perfectly reasonable and falls in the wheelhouse of a lot of gamers out there to what they would maybe want to run on a system that's, maybe 3, 4, 5 years older and wasn't top of the range at the time, as they do recommend a GTX 1060 6GB or an RX 580, which are perfectly in line with each other. I've done countless videos comparing the 1060 against the 580. For the CPU, the i5 4670 or Ryzen 5 1600, 16 gigabytes of RAM, Windows 10, and again 75 gigabytes, but here it bumps up to the SSD, and the size does not change throughout this, which tells me that there's probably not going to be a texture pack or anything like that. For very high, they recommend, this is for 4K at 60 frames per second on very high settings, an RTX 3070 or an RX 6800 XT, along with an i5 11400 or Ryzen 5 3600, and then below that, nothing changes from the previous requirements. And also worth noting is that this game will support DLSS as well as ray tracing, so none of that DLSS is not mentioned in here at all, and I'm also not sure if it's going to have FSR 2.0 or FSR period in the game, but I hope that it does. But it's going to have DLSS, but they don't mention if that's going to have to be used, to achieve these 4K at 60 FPS. I would think that it probably does, but you never know. We'll have to wait and see once it comes out, but DLSS will probably be great in the game anyway, so I'm really not too worried about it. For amazing ray tracing settings, they say 1440p at 60 FPS or 4K at 30 FPS, which does actually tell me that that is what you could realistically expect with DLSS. So with their amazing ray tracing, which is not ultimate ray tracing, so this is like somewhere middle of the road, which we don't really know what that means. There could be like a low, medium, high value for ray tracing, or maybe it'll mean like you'll use reflections but not shadows or something, depending on how many ray tracing effects are in the game. But the fact that it mentions 4K at 1440 at 60 or 4K at 30 would tell me if you're gaming on a 4K display and looking to get 30 FPS with these settings, whacking on DLSS on quality essentially runs the game at 1440p. So you would get 60 FPS with DLSS on. That's more or less what it tells me. And then for the presets, they say it's high ray tracing on high. Okay, so it does actually denote that part there. I didn't notice that before. So, okay, there you go. And then it would be high settings in game, I think, and then ray tracing on high. Okay. Well, I would still want to be able to put ultra, though, or very high, as this mentions very high, so maybe there's something above high. We'll have to wait and see when the game comes out August 12th, but the requirements don't change here from the RTX 3070 but the 1600 XT does get tacked onto there, which is kind of weird that the 3070 stayed the same and 1600 XT went up. For the CPU, 11600K or Ryzen 7 3700X, and then nothing changes after that. When it comes to the ultimate ray tracing, this is where things start to get really taxing, as it mentions for average performance to 4K 60 FPS. Again, it mentions high settings, but ray tracing on very high. Again, I think this high will probably go up to very high or maybe even ultra. Hopefully, I hope there's some other settings there and tweaking. But for the GPU, they say an RTX 3080 or a 6950 XT from AMD. And the CPU, also beastly requirements, a 12700K or a Ryzen 9 5900X. So I'm thinking this game's going to be pretty CPU taxing. And also 32 gigabytes of system memory for the ultimate ray tracing. Again, Windows 10 64-bit though, and 75 gigabyte SSD. Although I would say if you're getting into that point where you're at that high end of hardware, I would even maybe change this to a 65 gigabyte NVMe SSD. Not necessarily Gen 4, but at least a fast NVMe drive would probably be ideal to get everything running as smooth as possible. So we don't have too much longer to go until Spider-Man Remastered comes out. As I said, August 12th, so about 2-3 weeks from now roughly, we'll finally get a chance to look at this game on PC and test it out, and we will certainly be doing a port report on that. Let me know down in the comments below if you think your PC is going to be able to run it, and if you're looking forward to playing Spider-Man Remastered. I know I am looking forward to caning through that game again, probably on the hardest difficulty this time, since I've not done that just yet, even though I pretty much 100%ed the game otherwise on console. Next up, we've got the system requirements for FIFA 23, which I know is probably not the bag of everyone out there, but I love playing FIFA games and sports games in general, other than Madden, because Madden is trash now. It used to be great, now it's pretty much trash. But more so the fact that FIFA 23 is going to be the first entry that's running on the current gen version of the game. So for the past couple of years, the FIFA games, even though they had updated the game engine and the graphics, the visuals for PS5 and Xbox Series S and X consoles, if you were running it on the PC, you were essentially running the PS4 and Xbox One versions of those FIFA titles, which is unfortunate. But thankfully this year they are jumping it up to the current gen version of the game, and we have got the requirements for it. And this is also going to be cross-gen, cross-platform, which is nice to see for a larger pool of players. But for the requirements, on the minimum side, they say Windows 10 64-bit, Ryzen 5 1600, or i5 6600K from Intel, 8 gigabytes of RAM, an RX 570, or a GTX 1050 Ti for the graphics. DX12 is also listed as here, so you need to have a compatible video card for that. And also online connection. Oh man, that you need to have an online connection all the time, even for single player. Is that what that means? I really hope that's not what that means. I just hope that what they're saying is, like, if you're going to play online, then you should have at least 512 kilobytes per second or faster internet connection. Let's hope that that's what that means, not that you actually need an online connection, hopefully. Hard drive space, though, 100 gigabytes, surprisingly taking up more hard drive space than Spider-Man, and it's fucking FIFA. All it is grass and guys running with a ball. How does it need 100 gigabytes of hard drive space? I digress. Recommended requirements, though, the CPUs jump up to an R7 2700X or 6700 from Intel, 12 gigabytes of RAM, and for graphics, a 5600 XT from AMD or GTX 1660 from NVIDIA. So nothing too crazy there, honestly, with the requirements. Kind of begs the question as to why they held back the current gen versions of the game for really as long as they have, when obviously current PCs could have handled these games very, very well, as those requirements are hardly daunting in any way whatsoever, like unlike the Spider-Man Remastered Ultimate Ray Tracing requirements, which are going to be, I have a feeling, rather soul-crushing, and I really hope that Nixus does a great job with the port on that and optimizes it well. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on everything we discussed here today, especially Spider-Man. Got my new monitor, by the way, for anyone that's curious. The Samsung G70A just arrived late last night, and I set it up last night. Didn't get to play with it too much last night or this morning, but I did fiddle around with the settings to try to get the desktop the way that I like it. Games look great. They run. It's so much nicer to be back at 144 hertz. Honestly, like, it was quite dire there for a moment there, having a game at 60 hertz for the past couple of weeks on the PC. Because even though I play on PS5 quite often, the 60 hertz or the 60 FPS on the console does not bother me at all. And I think it's because of the distance from the display. Like, I'm sitting on a couch like 10, 12 feet away from this, like, a big 75-inch TV. It's a very different experience where, as opposed to a small monitor that you're like a foot and a half away from, or closer if you're like leaning in and gaming like that. You can kind of see all of those different like little stutters and the latency. To me, it just always seemed a lot more perceptible on PC gaming at a monitor. All the latency, as I said, the refresh rate, the smoothness of it and everything on PC is just a hell of a lot more perceptible, at least for me. Let me know in the comments, though, if you've had a similar experience, because I don't mind 60 FPS on console. Like, I know they're starting to support like 120 and everything on there, and like, honestly, I really don't care all that much. I'm sure in 5-10 years it'll be the standard and I'll be used to it and I'll probably love it. But right now, like, I can go from playing locked 144 on this 4K monitor to playing WWE 2K22 on my TV downstairs, and I won't miss a beat as far as noticing like latency or smoothness or anything like that. It's whatever to me. But you take me to go from this to a 60 hertz monitor in a couple of minutes, going back and forth from one to the other, and I'll immediately, like, I can't play this. This is like pretty freaking bad, honestly. Playing Stray yesterday, benchmarking that was pretty terrible. But anyway, I'm going to get out of here. But stay tuned, though. I will be doing a video on the Samsung G70A fairly soon. I'm probably going to take the week to, mess around with it, game on it, test it, film it, and all that stuff. And then probably by next week, I would say, I'll probably be ready to throw up a verdict on it. But so far, initial impressions, very good. I still think I need to do some work with calibrating the image, particularly the brightness and stuff, and also compared to my previous display, I don't think the anti-glare coating on this is as good, because the windows behind me in the daytime now are really coming through quite strong on a couple areas of the screen. So I may look to do a couple of blackout curtains behind me, as I have two windows behind me, even with blinds. I was very, very bright this morning, but it might go down later in the day. I'm also started working earlier today than usual, and right now it's actually not as bad. But like an hour ago, it was pretty terrible. But we'll have to wait and see, because usually the sun, when I first wake up, is like right behind me, and then by like 10, 11 o'clock, it's over there. So it might not be that bad, actually, which is when I tend to be in here anyway. But I digress. I'm going to get out of here. I'm rambling talking about this display. Hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you next time for another video. Peace.